Hi everyone, welcome back to the Story Lady. Today we'll be reading Who Was Alex Trebek? Who was Alex Trebek? It was nearly 7 o'clock in the evening on January 8, 2021. All over the East Coast of the United States, people turned on their televisions. It was time for Jeopardy! A game show that tests the player's knowledge in all sorts of areas, from geography to history to pop culture to words that begin and end in a vowel. Many Jeopardy fans didn't just watch the contestants on the show, they also played along at home. Sometimes they played against each other. If you were watching alone, they just shouted out the answers to themselves. Today's episode was very special. For 37 years, the show had been hosted by Alex Trebek. This episode was his last. Alex had taped this final show months earlier, on October 29, 2020. He was very sick with cancer and could no longer work. Just a week after that, on November 8, 2020, Alex died. So his fans were watching his last episode, knowing that they would never see him again. The show's familiar theme music started. A spinning globe filled the screen. Then Johnny Gilbert, the show's announcer, declared, "This is Jeopardy!" Johnny introduced the day's contestants. One was an assistant professor of English education from New York named Jim Gilligan. The next was a software engineering manager from Illinois named Cliff Chang. The third contestant was the returning champion. She had won the previous 2 days' games. She was an executive assistant from California. Her name was Yoshi Hill. In the 2 days she had been on the show, she had won $31,600. When he finished introducing the contestants, Johnny said, "And now, here is the host of Jeopardy, Alex Trebek." On this evening, the applause was even longer than usual. At the start of the episode, Alex asked everyone watching at home to be generous with each other. "We're trying to build a gentler, kinder society," he said. "If we all pitch in just a little bit, we're going to get there." Over the years, the audience had grown to love how Alex was always kind to contestants, making them feel good even when they lost the game. Everyone sitting in the audience watching at home was going to miss seeing Alex on TV every evening. He was more than just a television host. He had become part of their lives. Chapter 1. Life on the Nickel Range. On July 22, 1940, George Alexander Trebek was born in Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Since he had the same first name as his father, his family called him Sonny. As he grew up, he preferred to use his middle name, Alex. Alex's father was born in Ukraine, a country in Eastern Europe. When he moved to Canada, he changed his name from Trebaychuk to Trebek because it was easier for English speakers to pronounce. Alex's mother, Lucille, was from Canada. Like many Canadians, her first language was French. Alex's father spoke several Eastern European languages, including Ukrainian, Russian, and Polish. So Alex grew up hearing different languages all around him, and he learned to speak two of them, English and French, fluently. The town of Sudbury is in the Sudbury Basin, the third largest crater on Earth. It was created when a comet hit Ontario 1,850,000,000 years ago. The comet scattered valuable metals like copper and gold all throughout the basin. People came from all over, especially Eastern Europe, to work in the mines there. Sudbury became known as the nickel capital of the world. Alex's father worked as a cook at the Nickel Range Hotel. Alex often got to sit in the hotel's kitchen while his father cooked. Sometimes he was given little jobs to do, like cutting slices out of the big sheet cakes they served in the dining room. French Canada. Although many people think of Canada as an English-speaking country, according to the 2016 census, French is the native language of around 7.2 million Canadians. That's about 20% of all Canadians. In 1534, a French explorer named Jacques Cartier arrived at the shores of Newfoundland, in what is now northeastern Canada. He was looking for a more direct route to Asia. He claimed the country for France, and the French made settlements there throughout the 17th century. In the 18th century, the country came under British rule, but there are still French-speaking areas there today, especially in the province of Quebec, where French is the official language. When Alex was 2, his sister Barbara was born. Alex took being a big brother seriously. One day when Alex was 7, he saw his 5-year-old sister playing with some friends on the frozen river near their house. He scolded them for playing on the ice. If the river was not completely frozen, they could fall into the freezing water. To make sure it was safe, Alex tested the ice himself. He took a few steps. The ice beneath him cracked. Alex fell into the water. He splashed around desperately trying to swim back to shore, but he couldn't even tell where the shore was. The water carried him away across the river. He was pulled out by a passing railway worker who walked him back home soaking wet. There were 2 elementary schools in Sudbury. One of them taught all their classes in English. The other taught mostly in French. Alex decided to go to the French school, and so did many of his friends. When Alex was 9, his mother got sick with tuberculosis, a contagious disease that affected her lungs. She had to go away to live in a hospital for more than a year. Alex missed her, but he and Barbara still had their father, as well as their grandparents, who also lived in town. And Alex had a lot of friends. They played sports after school, including hockey, baseball, basketball, and football. After Alex's mother returned from the hospital, the family moved into a new house, which his parents had been saving for. Alex liked his new home. His father converted the porch into a long bedroom for Alex and his sister to share. Alex was a good student, but when he was in 7th grade, he had trouble with a teacher, Mrs. Jennings. Mrs. Jennings didn't like Alex's handwriting because it slanted to the left. Good handwriting, she said, should slant to the right. When Alex's writing leaned the wrong way, Mrs. Jennings slapped his hands. Alex went home and told his parents, "I'm not going back to Mrs. Jennings's class." Alex transferred to the English-speaking school. The students at that school were not very welcoming to a boy who had come from the French school. So after 2 months, Alex returned to his French school. He even came back to Mrs. Jennings's class. She never complained about his handwriting again. Alex was glad to be back in his old school. He was also discovering something new to love, the radio. At night in his bedroom, he often lay in bed listening to broadcasts. Alex's radio was small but powerful. It picked up stations from faraway cities like Boston, Massachusetts, in the United States. Alex especially liked listening to shows called The Great Gildersleeve and Suspense. Chapter 2. On his way. When Alex got older, he became friends with a boy named Maurice Rouleau, whose father owned the Nickel Range Hotel. Maurice was a year older than Alex. In 1954, when Alex was in 9th grade, Maurice went away to an all-boys boarding school. Alex asked his parents if he could go to that school too. So the following year, he joined Maurice at the University of Ottawa prep school. That same year, Alex's parents told him they were getting a divorce. His mother moved to Detroit, Michigan, where her sisters, Alex's aunts, lived. Alex was angry and upset about his parents splitting up and his mother being more than 400 miles away. It wasn't the first time Alex had been separated from his mother, but when she went to the hospital, Alex knew she was coming back. Now, she was starting a new life in a different country. His parents sold their house and Alex's father moved to a smaller apartment in Sudbury. Alex's anger showed in his schoolwork. Although he still liked playing sports at school, his grades dropped and he didn't pay attention in class. At the end of the school year, he was told that he should not return to the University of Ottawa prep school the next semester. That summer at home, Alex started to regret not behaving well at school. His father thought he deserved another chance, so the two of them drove together from Sudbury to Ottawa. Once there, Alex's father begged the principal to let Alex return. He said yes. Alex made sure that the principal never regretted that decision. Alex graduated from Ottawa Prep in 1957. He hoped to go to college at the University of Ottawa. He didn't have money to pay for the school, so he applied to the ROTP, or the Regular Officer Training Program. This is a program by the Canadian Armed Forces. If he was accepted to the program, the government would pay for Alex to go to college. In exchange, he would serve in the Canadian military for 2 years. Alex spent 2 days being tested at an Air Force base in London, Ontario. 3 weeks later, he received his results. He did so well on the test, he was ordered to report to the Royal Canadian Air Force Academy College in Saint-Jean, Quebec. But Alex was very unhappy. He didn't want to go to a military college 600 miles away from home. As soon as Alex reported to the Air Force Academy, he knew he didn't like it. He was told what to wear and how to cut his hair. It was a tradition for older students to order the new students around and play tricks on them. Alex didn't like it at all. So he went to the vice commandant, who was in charge, and told him he was leaving. "Don't worry, Sonny," Alex's father said when Alex returned home on the train. "Everything will be all right." Back in Sudbury, Alex first lived in a tiny room in the hotel for a while, then moved in with his mother's brother and his wife, because they had an extra room where Alex could stay. He still didn't have money for college, but in Canada, students could return to high school for an extra year that counted as a first year of college. So Alex returned to Sudbury High, where he had spent 9th grade. Alex's room at his aunt and uncle's house was barely big enough for a bed and a desk, but he still made room for his little radio that he loved. He often recorded his favorite shows and songs. There was only one thing Alex didn't like about the radio. He disliked how the disc jockeys or DJs, people who play pre-recorded music to an audience, would talk over the beginning of songs. His Uncle Ben would laugh every time he heard Alex yelling at the radio, "Shut up, I want the whole song." Alex had grown up loving all sorts of shows, not just the ones that play music. He hoped to become a radio announcer, producing and hosting shows on all sorts of topics. He applied for a job at a local radio station. The station manager said he was too young to be an announcer, but that he had a very nice voice. Alex wasn't discouraged. He knew he would try again one day. Chapter 3, Learning on Live TV. Alex applied and was accepted to the University of Ottawa in 1958. Since he did not have a scholarship to pay for school, he worked part-time jobs to make money. Most of the jobs weren't very interesting to him, like when he processed tax forms for the Canadian Revenue Agency. His job still left Alex time to play sports. He played baseball and football. Alex wasn't the strongest player on any team. What he was best at was encouraging the rest of the team. If they were losing a game, Alex could always keep them from giving up. When Alex was older and in his junior year, he tried out for another job as an announcer at a radio station. He didn't get the job, but that summer he worked for the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. He worked there again during his Christmas break. The stations liked him so much that in his last year of college, they offered him a job as a staff announcer. In the morning, Alex reported on things like the current price of cattle. In the afternoon, he went to class. Alex graduated from the university in 1961. He continued to work at the station in Ottawa for 2 years. Then the CBC transferred him to its headquarters in Toronto. Alex was the only bilingual announcer on staff there, reporting in both English and French. He also became the host of a weekly TV show for teenagers called Music Hop. Through the show, Alex met popular singers. He also got his first taste of being a celebrity. People sometimes stopped him on the street to tell him how much they liked the show. The most important thing that Alex learned from that show was how to not take himself too seriously. Music Hop was filmed live. That meant that the show wasn't recorded, then broadcasted later. People would watch the show as it happened. Everyone makes mistakes sometimes on live TV. When that happened, Alex just had to go on with the show. He learned quickly to laugh at his own mistakes. While Alex was still hosting Music Hop, he was given another show to host. This one was a quiz show called Reach for the Top. The contestants were all teenagers. Most of them had never been on TV before. They were nervous and would be embarrassed if they made a mistake. Alex noticed that sometimes one mistake could ruin the whole game for a contestant. It was tough for Alex to see that happen, so he used the encouragement skills he'd learned playing sports. Instead of saying, "That's wrong," he would say something like, "You were so close. It made a difference." In 1967, Canada celebrated its centennial. The country was 100 years old. Since Alex was the only bilingual announcer, he was chosen to host a 2-hour variety show with lots of performers. Even Queen Elizabeth II of England would be there. After the show was over, everyone lined up to meet Queen Elizabeth II and her husband, Prince Philip. Usually the Queen shook a person's hand quickly and said, "Please tell me your name and where you are from," before moving to the next person. But when she got to Alex, she continued to chat with him for a few minutes. This was because Prince Philip had stopped to talk to someone else and she was waiting for him. That night, all of Alex's friends called him. "The Queen must have really liked you," they all said. "We saw how long she spoke with you." Alex felt very flattered. The very next day, he hosted another show at a football stadium. The Queen was there too. After that show, Alex was eager to talk to her again. He reached out his hand to greet her and the Queen said, "Please tell me your name and where you're from." She didn't remember him at all, but Alex was a good sport about it. Queen Elizabeth II, 1926 to 2022. Queen Elizabeth II was the older daughter of King George VI of England. When he died in February 1952, Elizabeth, who was only 25 years old, became Queen of the United Kingdom. She also became the Queen of Canada, because Canada is part of the British Commonwealth. She and her husband, Prince Philip, had 4 children, Charles, Anne, Andrew, and Edward. In 2017, Elizabeth celebrated her Sapphire Jubilee, or 65 years on the throne. In 2022, she celebrated her Platinum Jubilee, or 70th anniversary as the ruler of the United Kingdom, and became the first British monarch to do so. when Queen Elizabeth II passed on September 8, 2022, at the age of 96, her son Charles became king, King Charles III. At the time of her death, Elizabeth was the longest living and longest reigning British monarch, as well as the longest serving female head of state in history. And that is the end for today. Thank you for joining us.